What if I told you that beneath the deepest chambers of Moria, long before the dwarves awakened the Balrog, Tom Bombadil walked those halls and sang to the ancient fire? This isn't just another Middle-earth theory. This is a story woven from the forgotten threads of Tolkien's vast legendarium, pulled from hints scattered across the Silmarillion, the Fellowship of the Ring, and even Tolkien's personal letters. Today we're diving into one of the most mind-bending what-ifs in all of Middle-earth lore. First, let me ask you something. When you think of Tom Bombadil, what comes to mind? A jolly fellow in yellow boots singing about water lilies? A harmless forest spirit who makes the One Ring disappear like a party trick? Well, what if I told you that's exactly what he wants you to think? Because the deeper you dig into Tolkien's writings, the more you realize that Tom Bombadil might be the most dangerous being in all of Middle-earth, precisely because he refuses to be dangerous at all. Here's something that'll blow your mind. In his letters, Tolkien describes Tom as representing something that stands outside the story entirely. He's not part of the great struggle between good and evil. He simply is, and that, my friends, makes him terrifying to beings like Sauron, who see the world in terms of dominion and control. But what about the Balrogs, these ancient spirits of shadow and flame who served Morgoth himself? Let's rewind to the First Age. The Balrogs weren't just random monsters. They were Maiar, the same order of being as Gandalf and Sauron. In the Silmarillion, Tolkien tells us that when Morgoth's fortress of Angband fell, most of the Balrogs were destroyed, but not all. Some fled deep into the roots of the mountains, hiding in caverns so profound that even Morgoth forgot where they slept. The Balrog of Moria was one of these refugees, a fallen Maiar who crawled into the darkness to wait out the ages. Now here's where things get interesting. Tom Bombadil claims to be older than everything. Older than the trees, older than the rivers, older than the hills themselves. If that's true, then he was there when the music of the Ainur shaped the world. He would have heard the discord that Melkor introduced into that cosmic song, and more importantly, he would have recognized it when he encountered it again. Picture this scene. It's the early Third Age, maybe 500 years after the last alliance. The world is healing from the wounds of the Second Age, but deep beneath Khazad-dûm, something stirs. The Balrog, sleeping since the fall of Angband, begins to dream. And its dreams are not pleasant. They seep upward through stone and root, carrying whispers of the old darkness, the flame imperishable corrupted into something hungry and hollow. Tom Bombadil, walking the world as he always has, feels this disturbance. Not as a threat to himself, because nothing threatens Tom, but as a sickness in the song of creation itself. The music of the Ainur, which still echoes through every stone and stream, has a sour note growing louder in the eastern mountains. And Tom, being what he is, decides to investigate. But why would he care? This is the question that stumps most fans. Tom doesn't get involved in the affairs of others. He didn't join the last alliance. He won't even keep the One Ring safe. So why risk walking into the depths of Moria to confront a Balrog? The answer lies in what Tom represents. He's not neutral because he doesn't care. He's neutral because he cares about everything equally. The trees, the stones, the waters, the very fabric of Arda itself. And when something threatens that fabric at its deepest level, Tom notices. Think about what we see Tom do in the Fellowship of the Ring. He doesn't just rescue the hobbits from Old Man Willow, he commands the tree with absolute authority, speaking in a voice that brooks no argument. When he faces the Barrow-wight, he doesn't fight it. He dismisses it like a teacher sending a naughty student to the corner. These aren't battles, they're corrections. Tom is restoring the proper order of things, not through force, but through an authority so fundamental that even ancient evils recognize it. So imagine Tom descending into Moria, not through the main gates, not down the endless stairs and corridors built by dwarven hands, but through ways older than dwarf work, through cracks in the world that date back to the music itself. He walks through stone like it's water, because to him, the boundaries between things are suggestions, not laws. The Balrog senses his approach long before they meet. This ancient spirit of shadow and flame has been dreaming of the days when Morgoth ruled Angband, when Balrog strode across Middle-earth as generals in an army of darkness. But the presence moving through the deep places carries no fear, no ambition, no malice. It simply is, and that confuses the Balrog more than any weapon could. When they finally face each other in the deepest chamber beneath the misty mountains, it's not the confrontation you might expect. The Balrog rears up in all its terrible glory, wreathed in shadow and flame, and Tom Bombadil looks at it with the same mild interest he might show a particularly colourful butterfly. Because that's what the Balrog is to him, a butterfly that's forgotten how to be beautiful. The Balrog tries to intimidate this strange visitor. It roars with a voice like mountains falling, sends flame racing across the chamber walls, wraps itself in darkness so thick that even the flames seem dim. But Tom just stands there, maybe humming a little tune, and the Balrog's power breaks against him like waves against a lighthouse. Not because Tom is stronger, but because he's completely outside the game the Balrog is trying to play. Here's where Tolkien's deepest themes come into play. In his letters, he wrote extensively about the nature of power and how it corrupts. The Balrog represents power turned inward, strength that devours itself and everything around it. It's the music of creation twisted into a destructive cacophony. Tom represents something else entirely. He's what the music was meant to be before Melkor's discord. He's harmony itself, walking around in yellow boots. So when the Balrog realizes that its flames can't touch Tom, that its roars mean nothing to him, that its very presence fails to inspire even a flicker of fear, something happens that hasn't occurred in thousands of years. The Balrog remembers what it used to be. Not clearly, not completely, but enough to feel the weight of what it has lost. Tom doesn't preach to the Balrog. He doesn't try to redeem it or destroy it. He simply exists in its presence, a living reminder of what the world was meant to be. And in that moment, something passes between them, not words, not a battle of wills, but a recognition. The Balrog sees itself reflected in Tom's eyes, not as it is, but as it was. A Maya, a spirit of the music, beautiful and terrible and free. But redemption isn't automatic in Tolkien's world. Free will matters, and the Balrog has spent millennia choosing darkness. The moment passes, and the ancient fire spirit retreats deeper into its self-imposed exile, not in defeat, but in something worse. Shame. For perhaps the first time since its fall, the Balrog understands what it has become. And that knowledge is a torment no flame can ease. Tom, for his part, accepts this outcome with the same gentle equanimity he shows everything else. He's not trying to save the world single-handedly. That's not his role. He's simply being himself, and sometimes that's enough to plant seeds that might bloom centuries later. Or might not. Tom doesn't force outcomes, he just makes them possible. But something has changed in the deep places of Moria. The Balrog's dreams are different now. Instead of memories of conquest and destruction, it dreams of the music of the Ainur. Not the corrupted version it helped create, but the pure, original theme. These dreams torment it more than any external punishment could, because they show it exactly what it chose to abandon. Years pass, decades, centuries. The dwarves of Khazad-dûm continue their mining, going ever deeper, following veins of mithril that seem to lead toward the very heart of the mountain. They don't know what waits in the darkness below. They can't hear the change in the Balrog's dreams. But something has shifted in the deep places, and the ancient fire spirit is no longer sleeping as soundly as it once did. When the dwarves finally break through into the chamber where the Balrog waits, they expect to face a mindless engine of destruction. And in many ways they do. The Balrog hasn't changed its nature. It's still a creature of shadow and flame, still bound to the corruption that consumed it in the First Age. But there's something different about its fury now. A desperate edge, as if it's not just destroying its enemies, but trying to destroy the memories Tom's visit awakened. The fall of Khazad-dûm is no less tragic for this difference. The dwarves still flee, still abandon their greatest city to darkness. Durin's Bane still earns its fearsome reputation, but deep in the chambers where no living foot will tread for 1,000 years, the Balrog wrestles with dreams it can't escape. Dreams of music, of harmony, of what it chose to abandon when it followed Morgoth into darkness. This is where Tom Bombadil's true power lies. Not in the ability to destroy evil, but in the capacity to show evil what it has destroyed in itself. The Balrog can flee from armies, can crush any enemy that faces it in battle, but it cannot escape the memory of Tom's gentle presence. That encounter becomes a splinter in its mind, a reminder that grows sharper with each passing year. Fast forward now to the time of the Fellowship. Gandalf faces the Balrog on the bridge of Khazad-dûm, and something unexpected happens. Yes, the Balrog is still a creature of shadow and flame, still dangerous beyond measure. But there's a hesitation in its assault, a moment of uncertainty when it sees Gandalf's light. Because Gandalf, like Tom, represents something the Balrog once was, a Maya in service to the music rather than its corruption. The battle plays out as we know it. Gandalf breaks the bridge, the Balrog falls, but its whip catches the wizard and drags him into the abyss. They fight through fire and shadow, across the endless stairs and up to the peak of Zirak-Sigil. And in those final moments, as Gandalf's sword pierces the Balrog's heart, the ancient fire spirit doesn't die with rage or hatred. It dies with something that might, in a different life, have been relief. Because Tom Bombadil's gift to the Balrog wasn't redemption, it was memory. And sometimes, for creatures who have fallen as far as a Balrog, memory is both the cruelest curse and the only mercy possible. But this raises a question that cuts to the heart of Tolkien's mythology. If Tom could have destroyed the Balrog, should he have? If his presence alone could have ended the threat that would eventually claim Khazad-dûm and nearly kill Gandalf, was his restraint wisdom or negligence? The answer, I think, lies in understanding what Tom represents in Tolkien's larger vision. He's not a superhero, he's not Middle-earth's emergency response system. Tom embodies something more fundamental than power or justice. He represents the world's capacity to simply be, without agenda or ambition. He's what Arda would be if it could exist without the constant struggle between creation and destruction. In this light, Tom's encounter with the Balrog becomes less about what he could have done and more about what he chose to do. He offered the Balrog the same gift he offers everyone he meets. Not salvation, not destruction, but recognition. The chance to see itself clearly, perhaps for the first time in millennia. What the Balrog did with that gift was its own choice. This interpretation also explains something that has puzzled Tolkien scholars for decades. Why doesn't Tom get involved in the War of the Ring? Why doesn't he take the One Ring and end Sauron's threat once and for all. Gandalf tells us it's because Tom would eventually lose the ring, not through malice, but through carelessness. But I think there's a deeper reason. Tom doesn't solve other people's problems because solving problems isn't his role in the music of creation. His role is to exist as a reminder of what the world could be, of what it was before Melkor's discord introduced the concept of domination and control. He's not fighting the darkness, he's living in the light, and sometimes that's enough to show others where the light can be found. The tragedy of the Balrog is that it saw the light Tom offered, but chose to remain in darkness, not because it was forced to, but because it had lived in shadow for so long that light had become painful. This is perhaps the most profound evil in Tolkien's conception, not malice, but the voluntary rejection of goodness, because goodness requires admitting what you've lost. So when we think about Tom Bombadil's encounter with the Balrog of Moria, we shouldn't imagine an epic battle between good and evil. Instead, we should picture a moment of perfect stillness in the deep places of the world. A moment when an ancient creature of shadow and flame was offered the chance to remember what it used to be and chose instead to embrace what it had become. That moment changed everything and nothing. The Balrog remained a Balrog. Khazad-dûm still fell, Gandalf still died and was reborn. But somewhere in the depths of Moria, in chambers too deep for even dwarf picks to reach, the echo of Tom's presence lingered. A song without words, a melody without music, a reminder that even in the darkest places the original music of creation still plays on. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's all any of us can do. Not to solve the world's problems or defeat its evils, but to exist authentically, to be what we were meant to be, and to trust that sometimes being genuinely ourselves is the most radical thing we can do. Tom Bombadil met the Balrog of Moria in the deepest places of the world, and both of them walked away unchanged. But the world itself was different for that meeting, even if no one else ever knew it happened, because in the end, the most important encounters aren't always the ones that change us. Sometimes they're the ones that reveal who we really are.